And now, the Deeper Thinking podcast, where philosophy, psychology, and power collide.
Welcome to the Deeper Thinking podcast. This is an essay in the form of atmosphere, a meditation on soft vanishing, on the quiet retreat of the self while life carries on unchanged. It moves like autumn, not toward resolution, but toward release, shedding, slowing, dimming. Its beauty lies not in what arrives, but in what gently falls away. Within its language are quiet echoes, Simone Weil on attention, Bergson on time, Wittgenstein on the unsayable, Levinas on presence as responsibility. These are not citations. They are textures. The structure is seasonal, the tone is spare. What remains is breath, light, and gesture. Listen slowly. There is no urgency here, meaning pools rather than points. What fades is not absence. It is another way of staying. Something is still breathing. The light shifts before anything else does. It arrives earlier now or later. It's hard to tell. It glances across the floor instead of the wall, cuts lower through the room, lengthens everything. The air carries less warmth, though the sun still shows up. A difference not in what is seen, but in how it is felt. There is no alarm, no signal, no rupture, just the quiet tilt of presence beginning to pull away from itself. They are still here. They stand in the same room, touch the same surfaces. Their hands move with memory, cup to mouth, coat to hook, fingers to fabric. But something has loosened between motion and meaning. The shape remains, the weight is there, but the tether is fraying. It's not numbness. It's not collapse. It's something gentler and harder to name. Outside, a tree holds its posture, leaves intact but still, as if rehearsing the moment before letting go. The wind lifts, but nothing falls yet. Stillness clings. The tree is not dead. It is preparing. This, too, is a kind of presence. They notice small things more often now, not with wonder, but with quiet. A sound in the wall, the hum of something no longer masked by music or speech. The cold edge of the mug after it's been emptied, not loneliness, not awareness. Just the recognition that everything continues, even as they begin to slip out of the frame. Heidegger once wrote that being is not always appearance, that existence does not require illumination. They think of this not directly, but bodily. The light moves. The self does not follow. It watches one pace behind. Their breath fogs the window for a moment. Then it vanishes. They press their hand against the glass. It's cold. That feels honest. That feels real. They are not leaving. They are not gone. But they have stopped trying to arrive fully. The room allows this. The day allows this. No one demands more than what is already performed. A curtain lifts at the edge of the window, stirred by air. It looks like a gesture, like something reaching out, but it isn't. It's just movement, just air. This is not the story of loss. Overthloch? Not yet. It is the moment before, the almost, the beginning of the beautiful quiet in which nothing breaks, but everything starts to recede. They wake when the room is still blue before the alarm sounds. The body rises not from urgency, but from rhythm, a practiced sequence of motion. Feet to floor, water running, steam rising. They move through morning not with intent, but with muscle memory. Everything is done as it should be. Nothing is felt as it once was. The kitchen is dim and the tea is made without thought. The same cup, the same hand, the same gesture of placing it just so on the table. They sit, not to rest, but to wait. Outside, the sky begins its slow shift from grey to gold. Light creeps along the wall. It does not warm them. They dress deliberately. A heavier coat than needed, buttoned all the way up. Fingers pause briefly on the fabric. Texture noted, then dismissed. Shoes are laced, scarf looped, keys taken from the same dish. The door opens to cold air that greets without surprise. They do not brace. They simply go. The street is quiet. Early. A man unlocks a cafe gate across the road. A woman walks a dog with a green leash. They see these things, they register them, but they do not reach. Their face holds the right expression. Neutral, maybe pleasant. Not avoidant, not absent, just smooth. Inside the store, fluorescent lights buzz. They move down the aisles with practiced efficiency. Bread, apples, soap. Hands hover over items and decide quickly. There is no indecision, no delay. The body knows what to do. It does it well. The cashier smiles and says, "Busy day?" They smile back. "Not too bad." The words arrive cleanly without weight. They pay. They leave. No error, no falter. At home, the motions repeat. Bag to counter, apples in the bowl, coat on hook, sink runs briefly, then stops. Silence returns. The house receives them exactly as they left it. They sit again, not to reflect, just to be in one place. The tea from earlier has cooled. They sip it anyway. The body performs all things correctly. The world sees nothing unusual. This, they think, is what it means to function, to appear. And still, something remains untouched. A layer beneath the doing that no longer stirs. The motions are not lies, but they are no longer translations of anything within. They are echoes, soft, clean, practiced echoes. They are told they're doing well, that they seem centered, that their calm is admirable. The words arrive like rain on glass, visible, brief, never soaking in. "You've always been so grounded," someone says, as if absence were a virtue. They nod, smile, and allow the compliment to settle between them like a coat placed gently over a chair no one's sitting in. The performance of composure is seamless now. They know when to speak and when not to, how to time their answers to signal ease, how to meet someone's eyes just long enough. Their voice is steady, their replies are brief, their stillness is interpreted as peace. Praise comes for things they no longer inhabit, for presence that is only posture. They are efficient, kind, responsive. They offer help. They remember birthdays. They send a card when someone's mother dies. These acts are true. They are not hollow, but they come from a place just behind the self, like a shadow doing the work. At dinner, someone says, "You're always so balanced." It's inspiring. They take a sip of water. They smile. They do not say, "The balance is the exhaustion." The silence is not stillness, it is distance. They do not say anything. There's a moment when a friend touches their arm while laughing and they feel it like an echo from underwater. Not unpleasant, just delayed. The body records the gesture, but the self is watching from slightly outside. Not alarmed, not surprised, just elsewhere. The lights on the street flicker on before the sun is fully gone. The windows of other lives glow with motion, hands cooking, voices rising, a television left on. They see all this and feel none of it draw them nearer. The sidewalk carries them home. Their feet know the cracks in it. Lacan once suggested that the self we know is never our own, that we become what others see when we are too tired to remember ourselves. The thought arises not as theory, but as recognition. It settles behind the ribs. They're thanked for showing up, admired for their steadiness, given space perhaps because they've learned not to need it. They are disappearing politely, gracefully, and the world calls it strength. This is the contradiction that holds. The more they vanish, the more they are celebrated. The quieter they become, the more clearly others claim to see them. Time unravels quietly, not with crisis, but with confusion. Days do not stack cleanly. Mornings feel like echoes of other mornings. An action completed today recalls another done weeks ago, or maybe just yesterday. The difference is less important than the blur. They remember cutting an apple. They remember the sound of the knife against the board. But they cannot say if it happened this morning or last week or in a different season entirely. The memory feels close and far at once, near enough to touch, too soft to hold. Moments surface out of order, a laugh in a different room, a conversation on a bench they no longer visit. The memory is real, but the location slides away. There was warmth, there were words, but not the content, only the pause between sentences, the way their hands were folded. The body moves through a world measured in tasks, but memory does not move in sequence anymore. It loops, it stalls. Sometimes it arrives in images only, a silver fork, light on water, someone's shoulder just out of frame, a sense of once, a sensation unmoored. Henri Bergson said that time as we feel it is not clockwork, but duration. Experience doesn't tick, it stretches, folds, pools. They feel this now. Time as weather, time as pressure, time as something breathed in and out of without keeping count. Outside, a leaf lets go. They didn't see it begin to fall, only noticed it mid-descent. By the time they turned to watch, it had already joined the rest on the ground. That, too, feels like memory now. Not an event, just a result. They forget if they replied to the message. They forget if the message was sent at all. They reread texts and cannot remember writing them. The phone feels distant even when it buzzes in their hand. A photograph slips from a drawer. They recognize the hand in the image. It is theirs. But the place is unfamiliar, the light unfamiliar, the other figure cut off. They hold the image longer than they need to, not trying to remember, just watching it, waiting for something to settle. This is not a fracture. It is not collapse. It is drift, a soft dislocation, A fog that doesn't obscure entirely, but renders edges vague. And in that vagueness, they begin to understand. What once anchored them to a timeline has let go. They have not disappeared, but they no longer know where they are in the story. They begin a sentence, then stop, not from uncertainty, but because the words feel misplaced before they even arrive. The shape of what they mean is there, pressing gently against the ribs, but the translation fails. What's inside doesn't fit the language offered. Not anymore. They speak when necessary. They say, "I'm fine, it's nothing, I've just been tired." These phrases come cleanly, easily, like paper masks worn without malice. No one presses further. The surface is smooth, and smoothness calms people. Beneath it, there is texture, but it remains unspoken. They try to write once, just a few lines on a page. The pen stutters, the ink is clear, but the meaning isn't. Half-formed thoughts collapse before becoming sentences. They tear the page out, not in frustration, but with care, as if the attempt itself was a kind of trespass. Inside the room, light shifts quietly. A breeze passes through the slightly open window. On the table, a piece of fruit is beginning to soften. A clock ticks softly. A truck rumbles somewhere in the distance. They are not interpreting these things. They are only registering them. The wall is warm where the sun touches it. The smell in the air is a mix of dust and citrus and something metallic. Their thumb runs slowly over the edge of a ceramic plate, feeling the slight chip near the rim. They exhale. Nothing else happens. This is enough. Wittgenstein once wrote that the limits of our language are the limits of our world. They think of this not as philosophy, but as ache. If it cannot be said, can it still be shared? If no word fits, does the feeling vanish or simply remain alone? In the grocery line, someone asks if they're okay. The question is kind. They smile, nod. The answer is not false, but it is hollowed. Not from deceit, but from erosion. What used to rise toward articulation now turns away before it forms. A list begins in their head, not tasks, not plans, just words. Not tired, not broken, not invisible, not explained. They stop before the list becomes something they'd have to name. The silence grows, not like an absence, but like a room expanding. It is not empty. It holds everything they no longer attempt to say. The language isn't gone, it's just too heavy to lift. They sit with it, not resisting, not reaching. The words can wait or not come at all. In late light, something shifts, not loudly, not even noticeably at first. A flicker, barely enough to be called want. It arrives not as longing, but as a soft pull toward the surface, the kind of impulse that doesn't ask to be named, only felt. They pause mid-motion, mid-thought, unsure why. Their hand rests on the table. The light lands on it. Gold, pale, almost warm. They do not reach for anything, but they do not retreat either. For a moment, they are simply still in a way that feels different than the stillness before. Not numb, not vanished, just present. Slightly more present. Outside, the sky is the colour of memory, not a specific one, just the idea of remembering. The air smells like something about to end, but gently. They open the window a little wider. The wind brushes the side of their neck. They do not flinch. They recall, distantly, being seen once. Not admired, not analysed, just seen. Fully, plainly. There had been no conversation, no need to explain, only attention. Simone Weil wrote that attention, true attention, is the rarest form of generosity. The memory feels like a hand that never touched them but somehow steadied them anyway. The feeling doesn't stay, but it doesn't vanish either. It pulses faintly beneath the skin, like warmth left in fabric after someone has stood up from a chair. Desire isn't always a reaching. Sometimes it's a returning. Not to a person or a life or even a former self, but to the idea of nearness. Of mattering just slightly, of being felt by the air that moves past you. Kierkegaard called despair the forgetting of the self. This is not that. Or maybe it is, except something small within has remembered, a detail, a breath, a sentence they haven't said yet. They don't need to write it down, its presence is enough. They look at their hand again. The light has moved. It's cooler now, more blue than gold. Still beautiful but quieter. They do not chase it. A sound in the street rises and fades. A door closes down the hall. Life continues outside of them and they do not feel excluded. They feel beside it, parallel, near enough to hear it breathe. They do not know if this moment is a return. They do not ask it to be. They only stay with it gently until it too recedes. The body persists, it moves, responds, completes. It lifts a cup, it walks to the door, it opens and closes things. It breathes, all without prompting, all without narrative. It does not wait for the self to catch up. They watch themselves brushing crumbs from the counter, folding a towel, tying a knot in a shoelace. Each act is familiar, precise. Nothing is forgotten. The body performs its role with an almost quiet pride. It does not falter, though something within it has gone dim. There are moments when they feel just behind their own motion, watching the arm extend, the fingers curl, the lips form words. A delay of fractions, barely noticeable, but it accumulates, presence lags, or maybe it's presence itself that has stepped aside. They eat, chew, swallow. The food tastes like food. The mouth knows its task. There is no pleasure, but no resistance either. It is maintenance, the kind that keeps things moving, the kind that keeps things appearing fine. In the mirror, they see a person who remembers how to look alive. Posture adjusted, shoulders back, face alert. The eyes hold just enough light to pass. They stare into them for a moment too long, not seeking truth, just wondering what it is that looks back. They remember reading Merleau-Ponty, that the body is not an object but a way of being in the world. They think of this now as their hand lifts a glass without instruction, as they move through rooms that no longer reflect them. The strange thing is how honest the body is. Even as the self recedes, the body tells the truth, in a slumped shoulder, in the way they linger a beat too long in a doorway, in the sudden sigh that escapes without cause. The language of flesh persists even when the words do not. They feel tenderness toward this body. It has stayed when they could not. It has kept rhythm, held breath, remembered sequences. It has not asked for more than what they could give. A hand presses against the small of the back, just for grounding. A chest rises and falls. A knee bends, a spine aligns. It is all still working, not out of hope, not out of defiance, but out of rhythm. Even without clarity, the body continues, and for now that is enough. It does not require meaning. It only asks to keep moving, and in its motion, something like presence remains. They wonder if silence can bruise, if quiet absence, even offered gently, still leaves a mark. No one has accused them, no one has demanded more, but still the question lingers. What harm does the self do by not arriving full up? They respond, they fulfill expectations, they keep their calendar in order, refill the pantry, remember to ask about someone's child. Their face moves in the right ways, their tone never cuts. But usefulness is not the same as presence, and kindness, when automated, begins to hollow. There are people who depend on them, people who say, "I'm glad you're here," not knowing that part of them is always elsewhere, not out of neglect, not out of disinterest, but because staying near now requires more than they can explain. Sometimes in a room with others, they feel themselves float just above the conversation. If they catch the meaning of the words, the timing of the laughter, but not the pull to join. Their hand remains on the table, their breath remains steady, no one notices the distance. A child once asked them, "Are you sad?" and they didn't know how to answer. Not because the question was wrong, but because the vocabulary no longer applied. There is no sadness, not exactly. There is only a thinning, a turning inward, a slow retreat that has learned to keep the door unlocked, just in case. Levinas wrote that the face of the other calls us into responsibility. That to appear is to be ethically bound. They wonder what it means then to appear only halfway, to smile without offering weight, to listen without truly being heard. They want to believe that the performance still carries care. That effort itself is a form of love. But some days they feel it slip, a conversation nodded through, a gesture repeated without anchor, a presence offered not out of connection but out of habit. The contradiction sharpens. They have harmed no one. And yet, something has been withheld, not out of cruelty, not even out of fear, but out of depletion. The shame is quiet. It does not accuse. It only waits. They stand at the sink, rinsing a cup, and wonder if retreat can ever be neutral, if being half here means someone else must carry the rest. They have no answer, only awareness. And sometimes that is its own kind of weight. The day ends without ceremony. Light folds itself into the corners of the room, thin and colourless. Shadows lengthen, then dissolve. The air cools. The walls stay quiet. Nothing announces itself. This is not closure. It is not return. It is simply what happens when rhythm continues without resistance. They move through the final motions. A glass rinsed, a switch flipped, a door latched, each act quiet, deliberate, unremarkable. The house exhales as they do. Not in relief, just in rhythm. There is no urgency to sleep, no anticipation for morning. Time has become a steady drift, not a destination. The coat is folded over a chair. The mug is left on the counter. The lights are dimmed, but not off. Outside, the bare tree stands still under a sky that no longer glows. There are no stars, only the faintest impression of them tucked behind clouds that do not move. They sit for a while before bed, not thinking, not planning. Just sitting. The chair creaks once beneath them. A wind shifts the shutter. The world outside does not knock. It has learned to let them be. They are not waiting to feel more. They are not hoping for return. They no longer speak to the absence or resist it. They simply share space with it now. The room holds them. The silence does not press. It allows. It is not empty. It is not cold. It is just wide enough. Heidegger once wrote that being does not require striving. That presence is not always appearance. They do not remember the phrasing, but they feel the shape of it now. The truth that something can be fully here, even in stillness, even without becoming. The tree outside has lost all but one leaf, or maybe none remain. It's hard to tell in this light. Either way it stands, rooted, not in waiting, but in rest. They lie down. The bed receives them. The dark has no questions. There is no triumph in this, no revelation. Only a quiet that finally feels honest. They do not vanish. They do not bloom. They are simply here. And the here is enough. Nothing calls them forward. Nothing pulls them back. Still something listens. Still something holds. Still something remains. Until next time.
This episode of the Deeper Thinking podcast was written, produced and researched by Benjamin James. It was read by Holly, a digital narrator. For further reading, resources and a chance to support the show, visit the episode webpage, where you'll find book recommendations, key topics to explore, and a way to buy me a coffee. And if you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on your preferred platform